Now with that, it's really, truly my honor to recognize and to call up two tireless advocates for the decriminalization of mental illness, and importantly for our subject during these next 3 days, two advocates to implement an effective and appropriate 988 system in this nation, and they'll tell their story about their work in California. So I'm calling to the stage Taun Hall and her daughter Alexis Hall. Taun is the executive director of Justice for Miles Hall, and I'll let you both take it from here. Thank you and welcome.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. I know you have a fabulous sound team in the back. So, my name is Taun Hall, and I want to thank Sozosei and Otsuka for allowing me to speak today and be part of this summit to decriminalize mental illness. Our family is grateful for all the activists and advocates that have been working so tirelessly for so many years to save lives. My son, Miles Hall, would have benefited from your advocacy and passion to ensure safe alternatives for all people with mental illness. Unfortunately, Miles and our family, we weren't so lucky. On June 2nd, 2019, my beautiful son was shot and killed by the Walnut Creek Police Department while experiencing a mental health crisis. Our call for help should have been responded with compassion, but instead he was treated like a criminal. Having trained mental health professionals respond to our call instead of the police could have saved Miles. Our call for help was answered with deadly bullets. If we had 988, the new federally mandated mental health crisis phone number to call, Miles would most likely be alive today. This new phone number is critical for so many Americans for safety. We need a preventative approach that doesn't criminalize our loved ones with police response. Miles was kind and thoughtful and someone you wanted to know. He was gentle, he was funny, and he struggled with mental illness. Miles was a self-taught musician who learned how to play powerful rap beats and music. He was warm, caring, and he was adored by his family. His younger sister, who's with me right today, was his best friend. They got along so well and they never fought. I met Miles' dad when I was a junior at San Diego State University. We fell in love, got married. Shortly after marriage, we moved to Walnut Creek, an upper middle class area, about 3% African American. We moved there because of the great schools and also for a safe community. We were living the American dream. We had two kids, a dog, and a house. As an elementary school kid, Miles was fidgety and squirrely. He was later diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. In middle school, Miles was liked, socially mature. His friends also said after he was passed that he was inclusive and stood up for others. In high school, he was on the honor roll and played freshman basketball, where he was awarded Most Improved Player and Scholar Athlete. Things started to dramatically change for Miles after he graduated from high school. We tried to support him as best we could. We understood that college probably was not for him. We encouraged him to get a job or volunteer to keep him busy. He seemed stubborn, and he didn't want to work or do much of anything. We tried to encourage Miles to see a therapist, but he wouldn't talk to anybody. As time went by, his behavior started to get worse. Miles thought he was Jesus, and at times he would go to our neighbors' houses, knock on their doors, and preach to them. It was obvious that Miles had a mental health condition, but it wasn't obvious to him. As his condition continued to deteriorate, we sought out help, but he found out you have to be a danger to self, danger to others, or gravely ill to get help. And if they're an adult, you can forget it. The police code is called, for a non-voluntary hospitalization, is a 5150, which we tried to get for Miles. I called the county to see what resources were available, but Miles did not qualify. Thankfully, I continued to seek resources. I found NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness. I took their 12-week family-to-family class. It was basically mental health 101. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, so I recognize a lot of the signs that they mentioned in the class. And then the instructor told me to contact law enforcement, just so they knew who my son was. At this point, I realized that this is a fail-first system. Preventative help was literally impossible to find. I learned that if Miles had 3 5150s in 18 months, that we might be able to start a conservatorship process for him. I felt like conservatorship was our only option, which relied on the police declaring 5150s for him. The day before Miles was shot and killed, he started to have hallucinations and delusions, which is common for someone with schizoaffective diagnosis, which he received the year before. I called the Walnut Creek officer that I had built a relationship for over 2 years. And I let her know we might need help because he's starting to escalate, and we wanted to try to get him a 5150, but she didn't answer that day. I called the non-emergency line and spoke to a sergeant on duty, and he said he would help Miles if things escalated. I thought we had a partnership with the Walnut Creek Police Department that would ultimately help Miles. The next day on June 2nd, Miles was in a full-blown crisis. He broke a sliding glass door at our house with a garden tool that our neighbor gave to him, which he thought was his staff from God. My mother-in-law, who lived with us at the time, called 911, and then I called shortly after. We both explained that Miles was having a mental health emergency and needed an ambulance. The mental health officer for Walnut Creek called me back immediately and wanted to know what Miles was interested in and tried to make a connection with him and want to de-escalate the situation. Instead, 4 officers arrived on the scene within minutes, within 30 seconds actually, with the mental health officer en route, that they did not wait. Miles was shot with beanbags within 30 seconds of them coming on. And then 2 officers shot their handguns within 2 seconds of the beanbag rounds. 4 rounds struck Miles. Miles died shortly after. When I arrived at the hospital, the mental health officer said we were the model family and did everything right. How are we the model family when my son is now dead at the hands of police? At this point, I knew it was my life's work to make sure this did not happen to another family. Our friends and family and neighbors started to organize right away. We began to go to city council meetings twice a month, pack in the house, demanding answers. Our friends created a community organization called FOSAT, which stands for Friends of Scott, Alexis, and Taun Hall. The group quickly grew to 500 people on Facebook with the help in our community, and Gigi Crowder from NAMI Contra Costa, who's here today. We weren't being quiet. We were holding the city council accountable, but they were not compassionate at all, and they treated us like criminals. I began to connect with other families that had lost their loved ones to police violence. We were now in a club that no one wants to be in, where I learned from Wanda Johnson, whose son Oscar Grant was killed in California by the BART police, and her brother Cephas Johnson and his wife Beatrice, to hold these institutions accountable and to contact our local legislators. I reached out to my local legislator, Assemblywoman Rebecca Bauer-Kane in Orinda, California. She understood the devastating gaps that our family, along with many others, face. This is how we work together to create the Miles Hall Lifeline Act, AB 988 Assembly Bill. This bill includes having mental health teams come to home, provide respite care after the person is discharged, which also includes peer and family members that are part of the ongoing care. We also formed alliances with other groups in the county, and were able to push the Board of Supervisors to create a non-police pilot program in Contra Costa County, where Miles was killed. The pilot program is now in the works and is their center of operations. It is called the Miles Hall Crisis Hub. It is my hope that every county, in this nation will have a dedicated non-police response to mental health calls. Our local governments need to allocate resources and respond to those impacted by mental health with compassion without criminalizing them. Our family created the Miles Hall Foundation, which is a nonprofit 501c3 with a focus on prevention, advocacy, and education, and to help families who have loved ones who are struggling and need help. The mission of the Miles Hall Foundation is to support and educate communities about mental illness and protect those impacted with mental illness from excessive use of force by law enforcement. As a new foundation, we need funds to further our mission. We need the work we are doing to make impacts in communities throughout this nation. We need to assist those impacted with mental health challenges and their families to make sure that what happened to Miles never happens again. We need to make sure that police are not the first responders and the main resources for people in mental health challenges. Out of tragedy, we want to create hope for loved ones impacted by mental illness and who are struggling and feel like they have no options, like we did. This fail-first system needs to be a thing of the past. Thank you, Sozosei Foundation, Atsuka, and the numerous advocates that are here in person and on the phone. The work you're doing is critical to save lives and ensure we can put an end to this epidemic of police shootings around the nation. We credit George Floyd and also my son, Miles Hall, for helping us bring and show that these are unnecessary deaths that could be prevented. And there are so many of color. So that is one of our real big missions as well. Please visit the Miles Hall Foundation at justiceformileshall.org to get more information on the work we're doing. Thank you. And now I'm going to bring up Alexis, who has a few things to share with you.
Hello. I want to thank the Sozosei Foundation for allowing us to share our story. I also want to thank my mom for speaking. When my dad and I do not have the courage or strength, she uses her voice to share our tragic story to push much-needed change forward. She is a true warrior and has not stopped advocating for better mental health care options and fighting for justice since our world turned upside down on June 2nd of 2019. As my mom mentioned, Miles and I were best friends. We did everything together. Growing up, I looked up to him and admired his ability to make friends with anyone and everyone and be so kind to those around him. He had such a gentle and caring spirit, and I was lucky to call him my best friend and brother. A week before Miles was killed, I came home after completing my junior year at San Diego State University to start an internship at a tech company in San Francisco. But I was most excited to be back in my hometown to spend time with my family. Miles was in a good place. He was happy, had new hobbies, and was stable. He and I spent the week doing some of our favorite things together. He showed me the new garden he planted with my grandma. We hiked and reminisced about old memories and watched some of our favorite movies. I always enjoyed coming home and spending as much time with my family as I could. However, within a week's time, my parents and I noticed Miles started showing signs that his mental state was declining and his behaviors were changing. He never realized he was sick, and he was an adult, so whenever he had episodes, it was challenging for our family as we were unable to truly manage his care. As you may be able to imagine, trying to navigate the mental health system on behalf of someone who doesn't know they're sick, doesn't know they need help, or recognize that they're mentally ill despite being given a diagnosis is incredibly challenging. Despite these obstacles, my parents did everything they could to support him. As my mom mentioned, they went to classes at NAMI, read books, went to support groups, and approached him with love, care, and concern. They encouraged him to do the things he had a passion for, rather than forcing him to go the traditional college route. I admire them for always looking for answers and solutions to help my brother. As I mentioned, my parents weren't left with many avenues to ensure he got the care he needed, so they were essentially out of options. When my mom called the non-emergency police line the day before Miles was shot, the the officer she spoke to did not offer her any resources or direct her to work with any mental health professionals. Instead, they gave her an empty promise of helping Miles if his behaviors escalated. Well, as you heard, his behaviors eventually did escalate the following day, and they did not keep that promise as they shot him within minutes of encountering him. In the aftermath of his death, we honor his legacy by doing this work. We were shocked to find out that many California police officers generally have about 8 hours of required mental health training. They barely scratch the surface of what is needed to de-escalate and care for those in altered and heightened mental states. Yet, with their minimal training, they also have the power to determine if someone is in need of psychiatric hospitalization. Mental health conditions are medical conditions. Just as we don't rely on the police for a cancer patient, we should not have to rely on the police to provide care for those in mental health emergencies. We now know mental health crisis calls often result in dangerous and traumatizing outcomes when police are called, especially in historically marginalized communities. Despite their best efforts, 911 dispatchers usually have not received specific training on how to handle mental health and suicide-related calls. Although law enforcement response is often not necessary or appropriate for mental health crisis situations, police are typically the first responders activated by these 911 calls. It's time we stopped allowing these ill-prepared professionals to be the first responders to our loved ones' mental health emergencies. It's time for our loved ones to not have to rely on police, but rather trained mental health professionals who can assist people in emotional distress. It's time that people in mental health crisis are not treated as criminals, because living with a mental health condition should never be a death sentence. A law enforcement response to mental health emergency has ended in tragedy or poor outcomes, including death and incarceration for far too many people. If 988 was in place on June 2nd of 2019, Miles Hall would still be alive today. On that day, Miles needed compassion, care, and calmness. He was met by the police in the opposite manner. Having a non-police response is incredibly important because when we saw his mental state decline, we could have had a team of medical professionals available who could understand his condition and respond to his behaviors in a compassionate way and be able to determine a course of action to ensure his safety. The work that is happening right here in this room and online is so important for families like ours who had no other options to help my brother get the care that he needed. It's time to decriminalize mental health, and we have the power to make that change. We would now like to share a short video, and we would be happy to answer questions after about our family's journey. Thank you.
Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. Oh, you see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, picket lines and picket signs don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can see. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Oh, what's going on? Yeah, everybody thinks we're wrong. Oh, but who are they to judge us? Simply 'cause our hair is long. You know, we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Oh, picket lines and picket signs don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can say, oh, what's going on? What's going on? Oh, what's going on? Tell you what's going on. Ooh. Yeah, 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 yeah,
So thank you all for, like I said, for being here today and letting us share our story. It's one I wish would change every time we're here, but it never does. Our story always ends up in a tragic outcome, and it will never change. But I did want to, we have a couple minutes. If anyone had any questions for our family about our journey, we're welcome to take some questions. Yes, hi.
Hi, my name is Bonnie. I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, I enjoyed listening to your story. It was very heartwarming and also very heart-wrenching. In my neighborhood, I live in West Philadelphia. Hi, everybody. I'm Amani from Philly. Hi, everybody. I'm Amani from Philly. In my neighborhood, we had an incident like that happen in West Philadelphia. The mother reached out to the police, tried to get some help. Her son was experiencing a mental health challenge, and unfortunately, the police killed him. So my heart goes out to you. Because I've lost a son, but not by the police. I wanted to ask you, so you were very happy, you were very excited, you moved in this neighborhood, you thought by all appearances you were doing better, and at what point did you realize or recognize that your child may have had some mental health challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, oh, I have this one. I would say that I saw it early on, honestly. You know, we thought some things were like attention deficit disorders, but we saw some kind of behavior. But I would say it was really dramatic when he graduated from high school. But it was a slow decline.
Okay, I'm the tri-chair in Philadelphia for the county system leadership team. I meet with all youth serving agencies. I particularly advocate for parents, because I'm a parent advocate, for children that are involved with DHS, juvenile justice system, but most of them have been impacted by behavioral health challenges. So I'm always curious when I speak with parents, when do you recognize these issues? And one of the recurring things I'm seeing, it doesn't make a difference whether you low income, high income, everybody's still treated the same. I just wanted to thank you for your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, but I would say, you know, Miles didn't show. He didn't have any like problems in school, or he was always well liked by his teachers. Every time he was done with his class or school, they always had just such positive things to say about him. Yeah.
Share the fact that he had a case pending against him because you tried to get him help. And that's criminalized.
Yeah. So again, to the criminalization, we basically tried to seek out help for Miles the year before. That's when we got his diagnosis. And with even that the police knew his story, knew he was having mental illness and struggles, he was criminalized then for them coming to help us the year before. And it really stressed him out because then now he had where they, I guess the district attorney pressed charges against him. So it's just, again, the criminalization is just over and over. And there was no reason, he should have just gotten a diversion program. That should have been the very first step.
No charges.
No charges, exactly. Yeah.
I have another question. In the city of Philadelphia, we have peer specialists. Those are people. In the city of Philadelphia, we have peer specialists. Those are people that use their lived experiences to help other people either experience a mental health crisis or that have behavioral health challenges or substance abuse challenges. I was wondering, in the area that you live in, do you have any peer specialists in that area?
Yes, we do. There are some, yeah. And that's also, did you have a question? We have a couple, I'll take the last question.
So what was the end result with
Oh.
The police department. That's good, I'm loud.
Oh, no, okay.
What was the end result with the police department? So after this, did they make any substantial structural changes?
You know, it's really hard because the police went back on the force within 10 days. That was part of why we had so much advocacy with city councils. There was not a lot of changes, no.
Money in the budget, but unspent today.
Right, there was some money that they put $100,000 aside for mental health, but it still has not been used yet. So, thank you all for your time.
And then, yep.
Oh, Nick, you can't take it.
So we just have one question from our virtual audience. It says, granted that a non-police response to a mental health crisis is ideal, but such resources may not always be available, or officers may respond to a situation that morphs into a mental health call. For those reasons, shouldn't we continue to aggressively educate police officers in mental health crisis intervention to assure the safety of all parties at times or in places where mental health responses are not on hand? Yes, and that's something that we're advocating for aggressively. We do want officers to have more de-escalation training as well as mental health training in their calls as well. Do you have anything to add?
Yep.
Thank you all for listening.
Great. Thank you again.
Taun and Alexis, as you exit, I just want to thank you again for sharing your story with all of us. It was an honor to hear it. We're going to take a short 10-minute break now and then come back for our first panel, Knowledge is Power, Using the History of 9/11, Legacies of Racism and Discrimination, and Lived Experience to Design for a Better Tomorrow. We'll see you back in person and virtually in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
The Peter said prophecy.